This is the Pro Audio Suite podcast. Quick Bites.
Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite Quick Bite as we focus on booths and home studios this month. I had a session the other day with a client and they were using Zoom. So the audio engineer was at home on Zoom. The ad agency and the creatives were also at home on Zoom. So I zoomed in to that session. So I was capturing the audio at my end and I was using the big computer to capture the audio because I was in the booth. And for Zoom, I was using my laptop and just running through the interface.
Makes sense.
Yep. So we get through the session. We're about halfway through and then one of the clients asked for a playback. Now, what was happening was the audio engineer wasn't capturing anything. I don't know why. Well, it could have been capturing the Zoom audio, but no, it wasn't capturing anything. So then it was up to me to work out a playback.
Wait a minute. Back it up.
Yep.
Who was the audio engineer? If there was nobody recording you, who was the audio engineer?
Andrew. I don't understand why there was an audio engineer on the call at all, to be honest.
Exactly. Why was somebody being paid to be an audio engineer?
Exactly. So anyway, then I had to try and, they're saying, can you do a playback? And I said, look, I don't have the facility to do a playback. But I was capturing as a backup on my laptop using Twisted Wave the session there, which is going via the interface. And then the real session I was capturing on the big PC. So I did actually have something I could send to them. So it ended up where I had to break the session halfway through, come in here, edit down the pieces they want to listen back to from Twisted Wave, and then upload that to Zoom so they could have a playback. And then when it actually got to the audio engineer, he then played it back through his laptop or his computer speakers. So it was actually come out the speakers back into the microphone on his
He played it back
computer.
for everyone through an open microphone?
Correct.
The engineer, I use air quotes. Can you hear the air quotes? Air quotes.
Yeah. So apart from anything else, it completely broke the flow of the session and put me in a position which I shouldn't have been put into, of having
You have to focus on the script and the performance, and you're not an audio engineer.
So what do you want us to say? Do you want us to rant about this for a while? Because we certainly could.
Yeah, but what are the I don't know whether anyone's ever talked to you about anything like this before, but what are the expectations? What are people expecting from voice talent now?
I have had to set up a number of voice talent, and this usually comes up in a phone patch, but I would compare Zoom to a phone patch anyways. It's the same basic garbage.
It's not intended to be a recorder. It's just a communications tool.
And I think it's something that voice talent, especially because of COVID, are being more thrown into even than before. And it's not your cup of tea, your wheelhouse, whatever you want to call it. It distracts you. It only serves to hurt the client because it takes more time. And it takes you away from what you do best. And I've always thought, beyond that, just a larger issue is, especially as the voice talent gets pushed more and more into being an audio engineer, you guys should charge for your booths and your setup. There's a lot of people who spend a lot of money, dedicate their career to being audio engineers, not this guy. But yeah. And that's what they do. And so, let people do what they do best and pay them for that. And if you want someone to do that, then either assume that they're good at it, but kind of hitting you with it at the last second in the middle of a session when you've never been asked for it before is pretty annoying, I think.
I don't think it's voiceover's responsibility anyway, I'll be honest with you. It's the responsibility whoever's listening back. If we're going to need to hear it back, then we need to be able to do that. Surely if you were thinking about the session, you'd be going, let's get this sorted out.
It's it's like the next thing they're like is like, hey, can you play back take 1? Can you play back take 3? Can you play back take 5? Can you please play back the beginning of take 1 edited to the middle of take 3 and the end of take 5?
Yeah.
Yep.
Here's my theory. Here's why it's happening. Because it's a lack of education on the client's part as to who does what job. I think at the highest level of production, certainly in the States, I won't speak of any other country, but there's a very clear delineation between jobs. We know who does what job. Mm-hmm. We know the engineers, that's their job. Some studios even have a tape op. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but
yeah, it's a magazine.
Yeah. But those everybody has a job. So the jobs it's the old wearing multiple hats problem. And this is what's happened here in the States for sure. It's just the budgets shrink and the jobs become more the burden of the voice actor. Then you have clients who think they've only ever walked into a studio and sat down and listened. So they're in this like detached listening environment. They're on the end, they're in a Zoom room. They're all looking at each other in Zoom. Mm-hmm. And they're just listening to the session. And so they're detached from the production flow. They don't realize there's no actual engineer actually doing their job, that the actor is doing everything. And so for them, it's absolutely normal to say, can you play that back? Because they were,
that's what
they were posting on Instagram.
So Andrew, forgive them. They know not what they ask for.
Well, look, I understand on the part of the audio engineer. He just happened to be at home, and I think it's probably due to COVID. But I was surprised that he wasn't capturing just even the rough Zoom stuff.
He should have been able to capture it and play it back. Even if he was going to have to redo all of his work later, because he would have to revisit every edit with the files that you send him directly. Yeah. I see this as part of a bigger symptom or bigger issue, which is you see auditions, and the auditions basically say something to the degree of the talent must have their own home studio. And you read between the lines, and that means we're not hiring an outside studio to send you to. That's
the translation.
And then the next part of it is they want to run the session because they don't want to hire an outside studio. They also maybe don't want to hire a studio for themselves. And so they're all sitting, this was before COVID, but they're all sitting in a boardroom listening to a speakerphone, like a Polycom speakerphone in the middle of a big desk, and they're just directing you and they're asking you for playbacks, and then they expect you to send the files in. And they think that this is going to save them money, but it doesn't. And here's why. Because after you record everything, and even if they get some playbacks and they give you clear notes, if I was doing that session, when we finish the session, the edit is done. It's done.
Yeah.
Send it, done. Like, if not, what has to happen is they have to send you all those files. I have to jump in there. Hopefully you gave me separate files, but possibly not. Maybe you just gave me one long audio file. Is there a slate in that file between takes, or do I have to figure out which one is take 1 and take 2 and take 3? And they create a whole bunch of confusion, which now an edit that would take me 5 minutes takes me an hour. And there they paid for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I think there's also another issue here as well. I think one of the problems we've got is we keep saying home studio. We should change it to home booth.
There you go.
Because there is an expectation by saying studio that you actually are some kind of an audio engineer.
No, you're right. There should be another delineation between what a studio is and a remote booth.
Yeah.
Right. One has no engineer. Like it's the driverless car.
Well, one connects to the other. The booth connects to the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a virtual connection. I always say that you're on the other side of the glass, but the glass is an Ethernet cable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
Or something.
That's right.
But that's the ideal. And it drives me crazy that actors have to juggle as much technology as they do in a session. And I know some joyfully, love the challenge, or maybe they came from radio and that's just always been the thing. But it is absolutely not possible to be doing your best performance and engineering. You cannot do both. You can't simultaneously do both. You can microtask. You can, like as Andrew said, switch your brain off from acting mode, and now you're an engineer, and now you're figuring out this or that. But it takes you right out of it. It takes you right out of your performance.
While we're doing a take, I might be organizing some stuff while the take is happening.
Exactly.
I can take like a set of ABCs and chop it up and label each one ABC, so that when they ask for A, B, or C, I'm like, boom, there it is, really fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing that comes out of it for me is, I years ago in my senior sound designer days sat in a session. I was telling Andrew this story the other day, actually. We're sitting in a session and the client was like, okay, can you cut take 1 to take 2, and then that last part of take 3, can you put that in there at the end? And blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so finally we get to the end of this process and finally I think, okay, well, we've got what they want. And then they look at the voice talent and go, just come in and sit down for a minute. Robbo, can you just put some music under that? We want to see what it sounds like with music under it. And I had to bite my tongue and go, well, it sounds the same except it's got music under it. But my point from this...
No, it'll change our opinion completely.
That's right.
Yeah.
But my point from the story is that the next expectation? So once Andrew's playing back things, is the next expectation that he'll, as we've just said, cut takes together, and then is it, well, can you put some music under it so we can hear it? And then like video editors who are now doing audio mixes, do we have home voice booth guys who are doing mixes?
We do actually. I've seen some voice guys that end up doing their own mixes. They have they literally say they have production companies, and maybe they do or they don't. But it's, I think, a lot of like trying to get more out of less, and there's a breaking point where you don't get the value, for sure.
Yeah, I mean the other thing is that I find concerning is if you spend money and you have a booth that's isolated, and all you have in that booth is your copy stand and a microphone and a headphone amplifier and a set of headphones. You haven't got the computer in there. You haven't got anything in there. So does that mean you have to start working out of it?
Yeah. At best, you're looking at like a 13-inch, 11-inch MacBook Air, and you're trying to do playbacks on that little screen or something.
Yeah.
My job has been so interesting because on the one hand, my job is to
enable.
When an actor says, I have to do this thing, my job is to say, here's how to do it. Uh-huh. But my job is not to say, no, I can't tell the actor, no, you're not supposed to do that, so don't.
Yeah.
This is an issue where the actors are not their own best friends, because they're all willing to eat each other's lunch and try to grab the gig from somebody else and provide more services. And well, if you hire me, you don't have to hire an engineer, or you don't have to hire a studio. And I'm willing to give that away for free, even though these actors are spending, $5,000-$8,000 in a booth, $2,000 in a microphone and a preamp,
and then paying me to fix that crap all the time.
Right. They're investing in it, and they're hoping it comes out of what they should have been doing anyways. That they're not getting paid extra for that.
And it trickles down to so many different parts of the business. I mean, audiobooks too. The actor, there's this thing called ACX, and it's the Audiobook Creations Exchange, and the intention is that the voice, the narrator, is the producer. And what ends up happening is many find this an entree into the business and don't realize that those that are really successful aren't actually doing all of those jobs. So they think, I now need to learn how to do all those jobs. And I do teach people how to do all those jobs. It's a lot of stuff. And I'm like, are you ready for this? I've
heard a lot of nightmares about those contracts they sign where it says must deliver mastered audio. And they don't know what that really means.
Yeah, with very specific specs. But again, I'm a problem solver, but I'm also like an enabler, because like here I am solving that problem for all these actors, and then it's enabling those clients to keep having that expectation, and then they're going to go to the next talent and have that same expectation again, and it feeds on itself. I hate the word slippery slope, but it's a horrible slippery slope. It's a slippery slope.
Well, and at the same time, like I said, from my perspective, there's an audio engineer who's like, but that's my job.
Right.
I can do that better.
And so with COVID, like me, I heard a few scenarios, which are to me very promising, where the actor is sent a kit. Maybe they already have a studio, but even when they do, they're sometimes still sent a kit. And then they get to really actually be actors or performers. Like my great friend Lori Allen, I went to her place one day, and she had a MacBook Pro and of all things, believe it or not, an Apogee mic, an Apogee Hype, the new Apogee USB mic. And she's like, "This is what they sent me." And I was like, "Who?" She's like, "Oh, we're doing the new SpongeBob on this." I'm like, "Really?" And I was like, "So tell me what happens." And she told me, and they remote control everything. She's like, "All I have to do is plug it in, turn on the computer, put it on the stand, and then I type the password, and then they log in on TeamViewer, and they do the rest."
I know who that is.
Yeah. So this is the way things should be. The actor should be able to be the actor.
But that is a big network doing it right, and they have the money to do it right. But
so it's not that expensive. They're sending out a MacBook Pro and a $300 mic, and they have an engineer who's hired to run and operate it.
They have an engineer whose only job is to capture it, and they have a different engineer whose job is to edit it.
Okay, yeah, but is that more expensive than a normal? Well, maybe it is. I don't know.
It's just all part of their workflow and how they because when they have those actors on, it is all about because here it gets back to the value. You're paying these actors a lot of money per hour, and messing around editing on the fly is not the way to get the most value out of those actors. Take notes and do it later. And so they have their director directing, taking notes, and the engineers putting markers in that Pro Tools session. So they're not spending time going, let's do a playback, unless they have to, because they're like, let's get another take. Better.
Yeah, this is animation. It's not commercial. I know commercials are kind of different, where it's not unusual for the talent to be on the hook for 2 hours, and it's only about 20 minutes of recording, but the rest of it's waiting for approval. And that stuff happens all the time. But animation, it's a whole different deal. And
it's more of a sealed thing where everyone works for the same company, and there's less fear of your client in that world.
But what was brilliant in this context, and I understood immediately after I wrapped my head around the fact that they wouldn't let her use her professional mic, they were like, use this, was that Apogee Hype mic let the engineer remote control the gain. So it allowed them to...
There's a compressor built into that thing too, which is a little bit scary, but yeah.
Yeah, it can be used or not used, but the fact that it could be 100% remote engineered from the gain to the file delivery, everything.
You just need a remote control mic stand.
Yeah, well, those do exist. I don't know if anybody's seen anybody ship one, but...
The positioner.
Yeah, the positioner. But that's the way it should be. I know there's not a budget for that all the time, but it should be like that more so now. It should be...
Do they have a remote controlled taser?
For who?
Would be very handy.
The client or the talent?
Yes.
One for each. You mean like the Simpsons where they're all sitting around and they all have a shocker? They all have a button?
Can I please have an edit? Okay, fine. Can you do another take?
Can you play that?
Can you just put your hand on the microphone for a second?
Oh, yes. Waffle burn.
Now read it properly.
Oh, God. I don't know the answer to it. I can only hope that as we continue working remotely, that workflows have adapted so that the quality can still be maintained, and that there are enough of those productions like I was describing earlier out there, and that the quality bar doesn't fall, the performance quality doesn't fall.
My thought on all this was that after I finished that session, I realized I probably wasn't the first person to be asked to play back.
No, certainly not.
And then you're sitting there wondering, gosh, how did I handle it compared to my competition?
Correct.
Right.
Which is unfair pressure, but exactly.
No,
you walk away
true.
with it.
It's logical that you would think that.
Yeah. In my world, that's normal. Like when I set up a studio, unless the equipment is just simply not capable of doing so, if it is capable of doing it, it's part of my setup. Like I will set it up to play back. And if it's the right equipment, the actor doesn't have to even really think about it. Like it just works. When I set it up, it should be super simple to operate, so that the second they hit play, it's going to be heard. And it's not always easy. And it causes a lot of stress on the client and me. Like today, Robert answered a phone call, 7 a.m. my time, 9 a.m. his time, from a client with an emergency. And we were trying desperately to set up his system to do all this stuff seamlessly. And I still forgot one flick of a switch or one, preset, and it didn't work. It feels like you're building a house of cards. And I hate that. I hate the feeling that if one thing isn't quite right, it just isn't going to work, and it's going to blow up in their face.
And no matter how simple you make it, there's still a set of instructions and things that they need to know and remember. And it's still a lot of stress.
Yeah, even as elegant as it can be, they still need to have a certain degree of wits about them. They may need to take some notes. Clients with Post-it notes all over their monitors and stuff, whatever it takes. I've had some clients that have to write down what I'm explaining to them long form, like in a spiral notebook, word for word, or they just can't remember it. So it can be a lot. So I just want it to be simple.
It's also practice. So like if you don't, if like most of your clients don't ask for it and then you get asked for it, it's like, oh crap, I covered that with George 3 months ago.
Exactly.
Now I have to remember that, and I don't remember that.
Yep.
I think it's more on the clients to be reasonable about what's being asked for and understanding. The talent says, I am an engineer, I can do this and that as part of my services, then great. The talent should be presenting themselves as not just a talent, but an engineer.
Yeah, there should literally be now a line in the sand drawn where we say you're a talent and an engineer.
Yeah.
Like you literally say, I do voice acting and voice over engineering services. And when you're hired, it's like a line item. Like, here's my engineering services.
Right. $50 an hour, whatever it is.
Right. Whatever you decide. Yeah. I believe that. I hate that there's tons of out of work voiceover engineers or engineers that should be doing this work and aren't. And we bicker and debate about the actor sending processed audio all the time and how that's just not right. But it's become a necessity. And again, I feel like an enabler all the time because I'm setting up all these things to make the actor feel like they're providing the service that's expected of them, and then they're enabling the client then to not hire the engineer.
Yeah, or they're making the engineer's job harder or different.
Right.
Like today, I was like, they're on that Apollo console as an LA2A and a EQ.
Right.
And it's like, you don't say anything, but you're thinking like, I'd turn that off most of the time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's this?
I agree. Yeah.
How's this for an idea? So say you've got a home booth and you're expected before the session to offer playback, capture, maybe do a quick edit, blah, blah, blah. So you say to the client, okay, well, if you want that service, that's an extra $100 an hour. And then you have an audio engineer, wherever they may be,
come in.
join you on Source Connect, and they run the session.
That's right. Totally.
Exactly how it should go.
Yeah, like going back to the ACX thing, it's highly common for the actor to hire those people. They hire an editor, a proofer, and maybe the editor also does the mastering, but they hire that out. Because then you as the actor get to be the actor. You get to be the narrator. That's your job. That's what your passion is. That's your skill. And you can do 5 books in a month instead of 2. And that's a different scale of economy of scale, but it's the same idea. So I think that's a really good idea. And just like we have there's actually a database on a spreadsheet that one of my friends made for people that do that kind of work. There should be a database that's easily reachable of people that do exactly what Robert just said. If you want to call it virtual engineering or remote engineering or whatever you want to call it, that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Well, like part of it is just sort of educating the clients and the actors that even though the actor feels they're providing more value, they don't need to. Even though the client thinks that they're saving money, they're probably not. Or if they are,
pay me now or pay later.
Yeah. It's going to come out of it somehow anyways. You're going to take longer in the session. So the actor, maybe it's all zero sum. The session takes longer. The actor gets 2 hours. But I'm certain a lot of actors are like, oh, it took an hour and a half. Just bill me. I'll bill you an hour. Like everyone is so willing to take
Super
one on the chin.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like when I was a production mixer on set, and I try to get clean dialogue. And then the director would be like, moving on. I'd be like, and they'd be like, I'm paying for ADR and post. It's all part of the deal. Moving on.
You don't want to do that, though, because the ADR is never as good as the original
Exactly.
take.
We all know what bad loop, bad ADR dubbing sounds like, but this was the mentality, when it's we'll fix it in post. So
fix it in the mix. Indeed.
We're all screwed.
We are.
We're screwed all in hell.
Well, that's fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite recorded using RØDE NTG5s and Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging with tech support George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, proaudiosuite.com.